Dmitry, I am so happy to welcome you to this podcast and also just to meet you. I must say that a couple things before we start. Number one, I've been listening to your music and I'm absolutely blown away, completely amazed by what I've seen and heard. Seen because some of the music videos are so beautiful, but you're just world-class composer, and I regret that I haven't been familiar with your work before. And
thank you so much. I'm flattered.
Maybe we can remedy that by getting this podcast out and getting people in the West to understand who you are, because it's really world class and surprising to me only because of my own kind of naivete, assuming that it's going to be either all orchestral or all kind of traditional. It's none of those things. It's completely contemporary. But I think a good place to start is to just to get a little idea about where you are and who you are. And before we do that, out of curiosity, can we see you any better? Is there a light nearby that you can shine? It's okay, but already getting
better.
Yes, yes, great. That's okay. Carol, and she is our lighting and audio director, in addition to being our everything else director.
I don't know. Try to move a lamp here. Maybe that should be even. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, it's good. We can see you.
Perfect.
We can see you, and you look like a real composer. So that counts for a lot. Can you just familiarize me and our audience with number one, where you are and how you got to where you are? I know just a little bit, but let's start with where you are right now.
Sure. First of all, thanks for all the kind words, and it's a great honor to take part in this. I've been following your podcast for years now, and I've never dreamt of actually taking part in this. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, that's so nice. You should have been on it long ago.
Thank you. I'm currently in Georgia, in Tbilisi, and
not the state of Georgia, the country of Georgia.
No, the country of Georgia. And basically, a couple of weeks ago, when the war started, I packed things into my car, took my family, and we drove for 3 days to escape from my country. Probably I should say a few words about the war as well, because it's the most important thing today happening to my country. I would like to say that I believe it's a horrendous act, and I know there are so many people back in Russia who think that this war Putin is a war criminal to us. So I would really want the world to see that Russian people are not for. But there are a lot of people who are for this war in Russia, of course, but there are so many people who are against, and they're taking real risks right now. They're being prosecuted. They're facing prison time just for their views. Unfortunately, it is not safe to think differently now in Russia, and many people are afraid to state what they think, because they can lose everything. They could lose not only their jobs, they could lose their freedom, actual freedom. So people are facing up to 15 years of prison time just for saying that they're not, they didn't vote for this war, they don't support it, and they're against any kind of violence, especially of that sort. But me and my friends, my family, and everybody I know are against this. This is a act of horrible, violence, and we never voted for Putin, and we think he's a war criminal. Thank you for this minute of your the ability to speak my mind, because it is important for me to state this.
It's so valuable to hear that, and you're educating me and our audience on a number of things that you couldn't be aware of. First of all, we don't know until you've mentioned it that Russians are getting enough information to know how it really is. And there's a lot of information here in the West that Russians are being led to believe that it's a justified war and that Putin's doing this for a number of reasons. And so to hear you say that people inside Russia don't agree is very valuable, and I appreciate that. I also would love to know a little more about, number one, are you safe? And what were those 3 days like where you traveled? Were you concerned? Did you feel in danger? And what is your safety now in Georgia?
I mean, I think we're relatively safe here because we're in a different country right now. But the traveling part was, of course, I mean, it's, up to the whole decision of leaving my country where I lived my whole entire life came in about a couple of hours. So we only had this one talk with my wife, and then we decided to pack up and move out. And so everything you knew, everything you've built for so many years, your reputation, your work, your friends, your social life, whatever, everything basically turns to, ashes in a matter of days. But to me, it's so important to be able to speak my mind freely. I cannot imagine living in a society where this is taken away from me, This is like a basic human right, and I think everybody should have had it. I don't believe in anyone having the right to take this away from me or from my family and from my children. So we did that, and of course it's very difficult. We're renting an apartment in a different country. I've been working from here remotely on projects that I started back in Moscow. But it's doable, and at least I can be sure that nobody's going to arrest me based on my views.
That's fantastic. Your description of your current life actually raises even more questions for me. Number one, what was the thought that made you turn to your wife and said, we got to go? Was there a minute or an event or a news report or something that made you say, you know what, we can't stay? And number two, when you said you're working remotely, did you literally close up your apartment, pack your whole studio, and do you know if you'll ever come back to that, or is it that's history now?
I did pack up my studio. I took as much as I could. Hold on, let me show you what I have here. It's like a mobile whatever setup.
Perfect.
That's my workspace right there.
And then also
I used to have a large studio.
You're showing us right now the most important part of your studio, which is your brain.
Yeah.
And your talent.
That is one thing that I try to, really tell myself when I was panicking, that I don't get paid for the tools. I get paid for the ideas I have and the execution that I can provide.
Perfect.
Of those ideas. So
tell us about that conversation and what prompted you to turn to your wife and say, we're out of here.
So basically it was two things. First, it was a gradual process. As I said, we took part in so many protests during these years in Moscow. So we were kind of already involved in the political context, and we knew that the country wasn't heading to a future that we liked. But we tried to do our best to change it, and still we had so much work and social connections, and we had a great life in Moscow. But then at some point, things start to get worse and worse and worse, and you really start to question if these things outweigh the the pluses that you have, the life, the concerts, the studio recordings, whatever. And then when the war started, of course, we were all shocked. And for the first few days, it was really hard to think clearly and to, really digest the situation and sort of come up with a plan on how to act, if you have to act or not, if you have to wait. It's very hard because, as you've mentioned, there's so much of propaganda in Russia. Most people I know take information from internet, but still, even on the internet, there is so much of information from both sides that is just false, and it's made up on purpose. It's not like somebody's mistakenly posted something. It's made to lead you to sort of a mixed up reality. So at some point there were rumors actually that they would close the borders, and also that there might be a call to arms for every man in country. And I can't imagine myself with a gun in a foreign country. So we decided that for our own safety, it's best to move out, and then if everything gets normal, we could always return. But for now, I can't see that happening, to be honest. I'd love to, but I can't see that happening.
Do you think you'll stay in Georgia, or can we hope to start seeing you either London or Los Angeles or New York to work on the films that you deserve to be working on?
That is my goal, of course, to move to the West and to continue my development and my career, because there is no industry here. It's a very nice, safe place to stay. I have relatives here, and my wife is actually Georgian, so we have so many people trying to help us and really helping us. But in terms of my development and our future, of course, it's logical to move to somewhere where there is an industry and where I can grow professionally. So yeah, that would be my goal.
Well, I'm hoping certainly that our Score podcast is the first step towards exposing you to an audience that I don't think is aware of your talent and your ability. I certainly wasn't until someone said there's a composer who's left Russia, who is in exile in Georgia, that you should listen to. And I thought, okay, I'll check it out. And then I checked it out and thought, my God, the guy's a genius. It's just so beautiful what you're writing and composing. I also wonder, before we talk a little bit more about the music, as an artist and a musician and a composer, did you feel in any way in danger in Russia and have any attention put on you that would be different from another Russian citizen simply because you're an international artist?
Not really, no. Before the war started, I've had so much work. I've had concerts, and I've played some of the best venues in Russia. Never, even for once, I was facing any problems because of my political views. But after the war started, they actually the political context really changed. So there are new rules now, and you are not allowed to say anything against the war now, and you could be arrested for your opinion. So things have changed since then.
Do you think this podcast being shared on the internet will endanger you in any way?
It might. I have no idea who will be listening from Russia. Everything is possible. But as I said, I think it's very important to have the right to speak your mind.
Wow, it's so heavy. I can't even begin to tell you other podcast episodes asking about, a composer and where they grew up in California or New York and how it was, and they went to music school and everything's very la-di-da. And here we have a composer who's literally escaping for his life and his freedom, and then expected to work on, you said you have current projects. Is it possible to get up in the morning and focus purely on the music you need to write without being utterly distracted or depressed?
I mean, it's challenging for sure, but one thing that I found is throughout my entire life is that music really helps me to keep sanity, to find this space where I can be, myself and relative comfort, even in those circumstances. The fact that I'm still doing what I love and what I can do, and it's being the same thing that I've done my entire life, really helps both psychologically and mentally. And so music is a medicine right now.
Oh, I love that. Music is a medicine right now. That is wonderful. Can you tell me a bit about, of course I've read a bio on you and learned, but I'm not familiar with what it would be like to grow up wanting to be a composer in Russia. I certainly understand that there's some similarities if you were born in the US or London and a fairly traditional route, but as a young man, did you know that you were going to want to write film music and compose music?
So I started by attending a music school in Moscow, Gnesin music school. It's called. I think it's one of the best music schools in the entire world. Well, to me at least, because it's completely free. People go there when they start there when they're 5, 6, or 7 years old, and then there's 12 years of professional musical training that you have to complete in order to finish it. So I went there when I was 7 and took 12 years there.
In Moscow?
And in Moscow, yes. And there were some absolutely brilliant teachers, best teachers I have ever met in my entire life, and I've traveled a bit and I've been to different places. And these teachers, the way they taught us, to me, it's the most of my professional level today comes from that, I think. So my focus was piano and percussion. I was a pianist back then as a child, and a percussionist.
And piano's a percussion.
So that's what I did. I also, right, yeah, but I played, drums and the classical orchestral percussion instruments, etc. I played marimba and stuff. So that is what I did, and I actually believed I was going to be an instrumentalist until very lately. In maybe when I was 16 or 17, I started to compose. I'm saying late because most of the guys that I met in the conservatory when I moved there started composing when they were children. They were 7, 8 years old. They already started. So during that period, I was solely focusing on being an instrumentalist. So then I graduated from school, went to Moscow State Conservatory, and spent another 8 years there. So in total, I had 20 years of musical training. And all of that is completely government funded if you get there. So if you're accepted through the exams, which are very hard in Russia, then the government funds your education, and that makes it possible for somebody with great talent from a very poor family to get that knowledge. And so the education, of course, is very much focused on, I should say, more classical way of writing music. So everything that is, related to film composing, the technology, the working with recording stuff, working with computers, and that kind of things, I've learned during my free time, and that was like a hobby for me. But as a student, I had to write music write concert music.
For an orchestra.
So I spent 8 years for orchestras, for ensembles, for soloists, whatever. For 8 years, I've studied in Moscow Conservatory, and my majors were also piano, also percussion, but I've added the composition to that as well. So I studied 3 things, and then I graduated from Moscow Conservatory. And during the last few years, I've figured out I wanted to try to write for films, and I started sending out my demos to local directors, kind of stalking them, following them, trying to meet them at some parties or whatever. I'm still very bad at this kind of social thing.
Networking,
but,
we call
it. I've sent networking, not my thing at all, I'm afraid. But I tried to work on myself, and I've sent probably hundreds of emails and thousands of those, and at some point, somebody actually replied, and they were looking for a composer for their first documentary, and that's how things started. That was maybe already, 12, 13, 14 years ago now.
And so I want to know a little bit about the electronics that you just said you kind of did that on your own, because that's such a significant part of contemporary both music and filmmaking. And clearly, as I'm watching your videos, which we're going to share,
sure,
you're doing some really interesting things with electronics. So you brushed over that, saying that it was, you're writing for ensembles and orchestra, but now I see concerts of yours where you have what looks like either an iPad set up with pre-recorded percussion and synth pads and things. So you learned that on your own, but you have to educate an audience that I don't know, are there big music stores in Moscow that sell contemporary software and contemporary keyboards that you can just go into and buy, and it's just like the West? Or is it more over the internet? I just don't know, so forgive me.
I think, yeah, sure. No, Moscow is a great city. I mean, you can find pretty much everything there in terms of both technology and knowledge and whatever you're into. So that really wasn't a problem. The problem is spending the right amount of time and actually learning these tools. I think that today we live in a world where the knowledge is out there. I mean, there's tons of YouTube videos, and everybody could learn if they have the time. It's just the dedication and finding the information that you need, which is challenging at times because there's so much of it, but it's definitely doable. For me, it comes from I've been my whole educational life I've been a classical musician, but outside of this world, I was always listening to all sorts of different music, and that comes from my family. My parents were always into so much of great music, ranging from jazz to the classical rock and stuff from that. So I grew up in a house where we always had something playing, and whatever it was great. I mean, it was the best of they could find from jazz, and best examples of classical rock, and also symphonic music and whatever. So I was raised in a very diverse musical context. And that sort of developed as I grew up, of course, and I started listening to electronic music. I started to play in bands, and that led me to start my own project at some point, which you've mentioned, where I perform on piano, but I also have a lot of electronic instruments and pre-recorded stuff, and we also have a string band on the stage. And to me, I was always searching for a place where I could take all the inspirations I've had from different musical worlds, and sort of find a language that that makes it organic for them to be in one context, which is very hard. Well, it was for me because I've spent many years searching for that language, because many times if you take strings and add a synthesizer, it sounds like a synthesizer added to strings, and you can hear that somebody wrote the strings first and then he added the synthesizer or whatever. But actually composing with these things in mind, how they actually will cooperate and how they work together, is something that I had to develop.
It sounds like you've developed a pretty amazing combination, because I hear a very organic language, and I also think that what you're doing is utterly contemporary. The marriage of orchestral instruments, synthetic sounds, and it is a perfect language for contemporary film, because as you know, composers now, I get asked all the time, well, what do you think about composers who use synthesizers? And I think it's like, what, if you're an author of a book and you use Microsoft Word, it's different than if you use a pencil and a piece of paper to write who doesn't use the electronic tools? So it feels very natural in your work. And I just want to find more opportunities. I wonder, how do you, now that you've at least started to work and score things, and this may be an answer that's evolving because of where you are currently, how do you reach out and get your work heard by film directors now? And what is your thought on how to proceed with that?
For the last probably 3 to 4 years, I haven't been doing much of that kind of work of finding directors, because I had been receiving calls, and I had some constant workflow already.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but all of that is in the past, I guess, now. I'll probably use something like emails, or try to find someone that knows somebody. And it's very difficult I think it's very difficult to get heard, because there are so many great and so many talented composers right now, and everybody needs to have their voice heard, and that's totally fine. But maybe, I don't know, maybe the internet, the social networks can get some chances.
Maybe this will help.
Otherwise, I think it's...
Maybe people,
maybe this
people
will
see this, and our director will see this and call me to say, how do I find that guy? So that's one of the exciting things that I'm hoping will happen. Can you tell us in one of Dmitry's typical days or weeks, what percentage of work right now are you doing on your own compositions? I know that you've released an incredible record, which I listened to. Deep White was an unbelievable piece of music and dance. I mean, whoever the director was of that and the dancers, that is first class, and available to everyone from your record. I also saw Moonlight with the dancers in shadow on the walls. I mean, this is really extraordinary work, but I'm wondering how much of your work is that kind of original music and how much now is film music? And is it the same in a day where you divide your day up into both, or if you're on a film, is that all you're doing and the other is pushed to the side?
Yeah. Typically, it's very hard for me to focus on several big things at once. I tend to really dive into one thing and spend a lot of time in that project. It's just the way I am. It's easier for me to kind of focus my attention on one thing. I mean, I can take on like different jobs, smaller jobs like orchestrating or working with a band on their arrangement or something. But typically, if I'm doing a film, it's the main thing I'm doing, and I'm trying really hard not to take on any other jobs. And I think that's I know that it's bad. I mean, bad for your business model, and you can earn more if you take on more jobs. But one thing that I've learned from my teachers during the school years and conservatory was that it's not always about getting all the money you can earn and all the jobs you can get. We are really dedicated. We should be really dedicated to making the most out of the music itself and making the best music that we can. And for me, that leads to actually focusing on what am I doing right now, and not spilling my attention all over. So when I work on film, I usually don't do anything else. Well, except maybe, as I said, some arrangements here and there also. I've spent close to 2 years doing this album that you mentioned. And that is, of course, because I had to spend a segment of time doing this and then spend, 3 months working on a film and then come back to working on the album. But the last maybe 4 months, I've actually had to turn down a few offers on doing film music in order to finish the record, because I understood that, you either do it or you don't. So my workday typically is getting up, getting to the desk, starting writing music, and then finishing in the evening, going back to my kids and spending some time with them. It's a standard thing.
First of all, I'd like to say there's not a film director listening to this that won't say, that's the guy I want, somebody who focuses 100% on the film. So the business model that you described that you think may not be as attractive, it's completely wonderful for anybody that's looking for a composer to know they're totally focused. And in addition, I don't know how you could write a film score without being obsessed with getting it done and falling asleep with a melody in your head thinking, is this the best song or tune or arrangement for that cue, and waking up in the middle of the night and thinking, I wonder if that should be a B flat right there. And then how do you stay in bed and not get up and tinker? I mean, any of us that have worked on anything, that's what makes people who are creative. It's not like you have an option. So I think what you've described is the perfect business model. And I just wonder also, when you're doing a film in Russia, again, forgive me for how silly these questions must be, but this is a first for me as well. Do you do a traditional process? Of course, here the director and the composer meet and they do a little dance around each other. Do we like each other? What do you hear in my script? Are you sent scripts by directors? What do you think? Do you want to send me some themes? Or is there any music that you think would be great? And do you sit and spot a film with a director, or do it, over Zoom or something? Is it still the traditional process? Or do they send you a movie and say, call us when you're done, or somewhere in between all that? Because there's so many ways that a composer can work with a director.
Sure. It varies. It depends on the director. Some people like to meet and discuss the film. I love to meet people, at least once before starting a project of that size. It's nice to have a chat and sort of just understand what this director likes, what's his taste like, what are his tastes like, what is the music that he listens to, what is he looking for in a music score, what examples of film scores does he like, does he think that work well. So all those things, because we've never met each other, and of course we all come from so many different backgrounds, so that's only natural that we have different tastes, which is great, and oftentimes leads to the best possible collaborations. We meet, we might have a discussion, we might listen to some music, we might watch some of the film and maybe discuss the scenes. And then we either do the spotting, so we go through all of the film and write down everything there is to know about where the music starts and that kind of stuff, or I get sent the rough cut where there is temp music, and which is basically the same as doing the spotting session because it has the starts of the cues, and you can make the whole cue sheet from that. And I usually do I write a demo. I start by spending some time just figuring out what is the main thing I'm going to do with music in this film. What is the genre? What kind of themes I'd like to have? What kind of messages do the themes have to bring? And this is from just watching the film maybe once, and then spending some time away from the movie, and try to come up with a strong musical idea that somehow embodies the heart of the film. And that is probably the hardest part, because you have to, it's the hardest part. I mean, everything else, there's so much craft in this work, but this has to be, there has to be some kind of a creative spark for that to happen.
I appreciate all that. Yep.
So then I can write a demo of a main theme if I've decided that I'm going to have a main theme in this movie, and send it over to the director and see how he reacts to that. And if he's hopefully fine and he likes it and he really thinks that it works with the idea of the film, then I will try to arrange it for a few scenes, and we can see how it works in the context of these scenes, and maybe try a smaller arrangement, a larger one, a more epic, or whatever the film needs, and see how much of flexibility the music has. I mean, if it can be played both on a solo instrument and then played in the full tutti orchestral setting, and see if it's it's flexible enough, because in the end you don't want to be stuck with a theme that only works in one way, because you're going to have to write a lot of music and it has to work. It has to be flexible enough. So and we go from there. And then if we see that this idea I had works in different scenarios, then I start writing music for each scene and sending it over for review, and receiving feedback, doing some fixes, and sending it back. That's, I think, the standard way of working. And then we, after we're done with the demos, we go to recording. I try to record with orchestra as much as I can. We have some amazing orchestras in Moscow. And I absolutely love that. Of course, everybody loves recording with orchestras, but I've been fortunate enough to do that for many years now.
And first of all, you've just offered a masterclass in how to score a film for every composer, and there's nothing that you said. I mean, I don't know why I would think it'd be different for you. There'd be some kind of other process in Russia other than in London or Los Angeles. It's exactly the right way to do it, exactly the best way to do it. And, what you leave out is what happens. The most fascinating part of it is when you write an incredible piece of music, you send it to the director, and they say, I don't think so. And it's like, oh, man. But you also remind me that when I've had the privilege of working with, great composers, Hans Zimmer, John Powell, all of them, and they talk about the tune. Wow. They say, I've got to find the right tune. And I always thought, that sounds, a tune, is that, you mean the great melody at the center of the film, the great theme? They always would use the word tune, and I realized what they were saying is exactly what you said, which is, what is that tune that can be in 4/4 and 3/4 on a solo instrument, in a orchestral setting, electronically, etc. Which reminds me, are there composers and film composers, I'm sure it's too many to list, that have inspired you, that currently inspire you, that you love, that you'd like to also meet or get familiar with?
I mean, there are so many of them. Of course, the ones that you've mentioned have been a great influence on me. We grew up on music by so many great film composers, and there are living legends right now. I mean, I can't even start naming the people because I'm ashamed. I don't know why, but but the sheer influence they had on me is immense, absolutely immense. From the newer generation, I thought that Johnny Greenwood was absolutely brilliant. I mean, the things that I've heard are so creative and so fresh and bold, and they sort of embody everything that I've been trying to raise in myself, and that it has it has all the traditional background, this music, but it has this freshness, and it's very much distinguishable from the rest, and it has this signature of an author. And you can listen to a Johnny Greenwood score, and you can certainly say that it's music done by this artist, because it has this imprint. I mean, so much of today's film music is, absolutely expertly crafted, but many times sounds very similar, which is it's a pity to me as an artist. I understand where this comes from, and I wouldn't want to, in any way say that some composers are bad or directors are bad, but for the craft itself, it's so good to have people like Johnny, like Hildur, that actually bring something new. And that is, I think, something we all should strive for. I mean, why else would you do it?
I love that. And you've just named two of my favorites. Hildur isn't that far from where you are right now, and I hope that there's an opportunity for the two of you to meet. Of course.
Oh, I'd love to meet her.
Of course, her work has been stunning. Same with Johnny, and I really appreciate what you're saying. And it also makes me think certain films are also just, cookie cutter films. They're just, and so the composer doesn't get a whole lot of opportunity to be incredibly expressive, and yet you get somebody like Hildur or Johnny with a director and a film that's also deeply expressive. That's where the magic takes place, of course. And
sure.
So I wish for you that you get directors that appreciate your skill set, because that's really the greatest combination is a director and a composer who are both looking for something beyond just a Hollywood movie. Can you tell us what you're working on next? Is there something on the horizon?
I'm doing a demo for a feature film that I'm not allowed to name just yet. We'll see how that goes. I've been working for days now. I've been rewriting it for several times, and hopefully I'll finish it sometime, and then I'll send it over. We'll see if it works out. I've just finished the series I was talking about earlier, which took a lot of time because I've started back in December, I think, or November, was it? Probably December. And that was a lot of fun because I got to write something I wouldn't have imagined I would ever write.
Again, so everyone can...
the name of the series is in Russian. Hold on. Let me translate. Probably it's easiest to translate as "Hello Again," which is it's a series about a guy, a killer who gets into trouble, and who's constantly getting killed, and then he wakes up again with a knife in his back or a hole in his head because of a gunshot, and continues to search for people who killed him, and then he gets killed again, and then he wakes up again, and the whole series is
sounds lovely.
It's very funny. It's a comedy with some.
It's a killer comedy
with some violence in there. But I got to you write a lot of really funky 80s kind of music, which I love, but I've never actually worked in that genre. So that was a lot of fun. I worked with some great musicians, amazing musicians, and we've done a lot of music.
I want to I mean, we've taken up a lot of your time, and I'm just absolutely fascinated. And I am going to go on the record saying your career is about to explode, because it is. I'm convinced. Can you just share with us any, and it might not be part of your thought process, but do you have any predictions for what will happen this spring in your country and for you? Do you think you will stay? Do you think things will calm down or go more serious? And do you think you can come visit us here in America? How's that for a lot of questions? Big ones.
Yeah, I'd love to come. I need to do the legal stuff, the paperwork necessary for that to happen. Hopefully, I will. I'm getting some help with that right now, so hopefully that will be possible. Yeah. Regarding predictions, I mean, I'm really hoping that the war ends as soon as possible. That is the main thing right now. I think it needs to stop, really, like right now. I'm hoping that our government understands that continuing this insanity only brings grief and trouble to both of our countries. There is not a single way of having a win in this situation. I mean, we're facing severe economical crisis right now. We're facing, most importantly, people are getting killed. So the most significant thing that needs to happen right now is that the war needs to stop. Unfortunately, I'm not very optimistic about things getting better in Russia. I'd love to be proven wrong, but as far as the political direction that has been taken, it's basically taking all the freedoms that were left away from people. I don't see why this would be abandoned, this direction. But I'm really hoping that it could be stopped. I'm hoping that people with opposing political views can be left alone and will be safe, which is very important because most of these people are artists, are middle-class people, and they are what Russia is to me. They represent Russia for me. I've been friends with so many amazing people, intellectuals, artists, whatever. To me, Russia is represented by them, not by Putin. And I would love the world to see that there are people like that in my country. So basically, I would hope that they have a chance to survive in this awful mess and bring our message to the world.
I think that is a beautiful and fitting note. I know that we all feel the same. I think that you are doing a beautiful job of composing music that does share peace and beauty and art with the world. I had such great feeling listening to your work over the last several days. I've just really appreciated it and been moved by it. It's very emotional, what you're writing, and I feel it. And what more is music than expressing our emotional life without words? And you're doing that. It's not that you've done it, you are doing it. So, Dmitry, many thanks for your time. I guarantee this isn't the last time we'll speak.
My pleasure.
Hopefully, I'll get a chance to see you on one continent or another. But once this podcast is posted, get ready. And I want to
Thanks.
share it also with many of my composer friends so they're aware of you, and I'm sure a lot of them would be interested in speaking to you. So please keep in touch. Please be safe. Our best
Thank you
to
so much.
you and your family and your children. Our best to the world for peace. And I want to be there when you accept your first Academy Award. I just want to be somewhere nearby. Not that I think on a grandiose level, but stranger things have happened. So I think it's a beautiful future ahead of you. Please be safe, and we will talk again very soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Thanks so much for these kind words. Thank you.